Gaming Bolt presents 15 disturbing levels in non-horror games. All mediums of entertainment strive to elicit strong reactions from their audiences, and video games are obviously no different. And very few reactions to something are ever as honest or leave as lasting of an impact as being scared out of your wits. So of course, games love to do that as well. But for a game to do that, it doesn't necessarily have to be a horror title. Over the years, there have been countless video games that have had genuinely scary moments and sequences that, all said and done, didn't belong to the horror genre at all. In this feature, we're going to take a look at 15 such levels in non-horror video games. Some of these might be downright frightening, while others might just be disturbing in different ways, but we feel all 15 of these deserve to be mentioned in this feature. Please note that there might be slight spoilers ahead, so stop watching if we start talking about a game you don't want spoiled. In case you have any suggestions that we may have failed to mention, drop a comment down below. Without further ado, let's begin. Devil's House. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Hideo Kojima and his Metal Gear games have a long history of featuring some truly frightening sequences, and The Phantom Pain was obviously no different, in this regard at least. One of the more disturbing scenes in the entire game comes in the location known as the Devil's House. Seeing the dozens upon dozens of people who were being experimented on by XOF in this dingy location can seriously give you the creeps, while the mere presence of Psycho Mantis and the Man on Fire also presents a tough challenge. Hell, there's even a PT Easter egg in here. Milton Parking Garage, Fallout 4. Being set in a post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland, Fallout 4 is obviously full of places and locations that can be quite stressful, but the winding maze-like interiors of the Milton Parking Garage are perhaps one of the most distressing locations in the entire game. This is an area that is entirely easy to miss or skip. It's not even marked on the map, but if you do make it in there, there's no way you will ever forget it. On top of its winding design that is easy to get lost in, the area is also full of traps, creepy decor, and dangerous enemies. Andale, Fallout 3. But perhaps even creepier than Fallout 4's Maze of Death is this seemingly quaint and at first welcoming town in Fallout 3 known as Andale. Once you enter the basements though, and start seeing dismembered body parts and blood spattered literally everywhere, you realize that the residents of the town are actually inbred cannibals, at which that moment, they all turn hostile and start attacking you. It's not scary in the most conventional sense, but boy can it make your hair stand on end. Clanker's Cavern, Banjo-Kazooie. You wouldn't think that a cheerful, colorful, kid-friendly platformer such as Banjo-Kazooie could actually scare its players, but surprisingly enough, often it does. One such instance is Clanker's Cavern, which is a dingy, moody location with grimy walls and surfaces, monsters hiding and waiting to attack you. Oh, and did we mention, there's also a giant metal shark in here. Mad Monster Mansion, Banjo-Kazooie. Clanker's Cavern isn't the only creepy location in Banjo-Kazooie though. There's also Mad Monster Mansion. By its very nature, it's designed to be at least a little bit creepy, being a haunted house as the name might suggest. But the music and overall atmosphere work to make being here slightly uneasy for the player. It's not full-on horror, of course, this is still the same cheerful platformer, but Mad Monster Mansion is very much capable of making the player feel a little unsettled. Land of the Living Dead, Rayman Origins. The Land of the Living Dead is perhaps the single hardest level in Rayman Origins, though I'm sure there are some who would disagree. Not only does it house Big Mama, the true final boss of the game, it also is full of regular enemies that are deceptively fast and hit pretty hard, as well as hazards such as buzzsaws, collapsing platforms, snake-like skeletons, and an overabundance of fire. Add in a general visual look that's just altogether dark and gloomy, and you have an area that's more unsettling than it has any right to be. Android Junkyard, Detroit Become Human. The Android Junkyard is shown in the first third of Detroit Become Human, but it goes a long way towards setting the stakes. Not only does it serve as a major turning point for Marcus's character, it also portrays the horrific ways androids often get simply disregarded and literally thrown away. The Android Junkyard is essentially a mass graveyard for androids, where these human-like machines lie scattered around, often literally in pieces. Many of them died, but others still clinging on to the last remnants of their artificial life. It's a dark, moody place, and definitely one that sticks out in memory. Pokemon Tower, Pokemon Red and Blue. Pokemon as a series isn't one you would usually associate with anything other than a nice, fun time, at least as far as the tone is concerned. But every now and then, these games throw something at the player that can be truly unsettling. That began with Red and Blue, the very first games in the series. All of Lavender Town itself is a pretty creepy place to begin with, but Pokemon Tower, which is essentially a burial site for dead Pokemon and is often visited by mourning trainers and haunted by the spirits of dead Pokemon, is a disturbing place to visit. Catacombs. Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Return to Castle Wolfenstein was, in true Wolfenstein fashion, a game that often throws outrageous and bizarre elements at the player, and one such element was zombies. The catacombs are an atmospheric and claustrophobic area that are crawling with undead soldiers, and back in the day, getting through them seemed like a bit of an ordeal. Sewers. Star Wars Shadow of the Empire. The sewers level in N64 title Star Wars Shadow of the Empire is a classic case of Jaws syndrome. For most of the level's duration, you're surrounded by water, and the entire time you know that lurking beneath the waves is a disgusting, slimy monster that can easily swallow you whole. You can hear it roaring and grumbling, but you can't see it. It's truly frightening, and the stressful boss battle at the end of the level makes it even more so. Submerged Castle. Pikmin 2. Nintendo just loves putting scary, terrifying moments in its otherwise colorful, kid-friendly games, doesn't it? The submerged castle in Pikmin 2 is truly disturbing. For starters, there's the music that constantly plays in the background, giving you a very clear idea of what you're in for. Then there's the fact that you're constantly being chased around by this horrific thing, constantly running for your life, watching on helplessly as your Pikmin fall to their deaths at the tail end of your group. If you quit Pikmin 2 at this juncture, even for a little while, well, we wouldn't blame you. The True Lab. Undertale. Undertale is a game that is full of moments that can be surprisingly creepy, and the level in the True Lab is an example of one such moment. Only accessible during the game's true pacifist run, the True Lab isn't creepy because of actual horror or an excess of enemies, though the amalgamates can definitely stress you out, but more because of the truths it reveals. Learning about Alfie's experiments and the DT extraction machine is simply surreal. Creepy Castle. Donkey Kong 64. Creepy Castle truly lives up to its name. The seventh world in Donkey Kong 64, this is a dark, foreboding place floating high up in the sky, surrounded by furious thunderstorms. Right off the bat, it makes the player slightly wary, but as you enter, you realize it's been very aptly named. Throughout the castle, players can constantly hear disturbing moaning and other creepy sounds almost in every room and area. The castle also includes crypts and catacombs guarded by bats and other fearsome creatures. The Cave of the Past. Earthbound. Oh, look, another Nintendo level. What a huge surprise. The Cave of the Past, the final area in Earthbound, is truly one of the creepiest places we've ever visited in any classic old-school JRPG. The gray and foggy environments are unsettling as it is, while the fact that it's crawling with hellish enemies make it seem that much more unwelcoming, making it a truly fitting send-off for an already memorable journey. The fact that this all leads up to an encounter with Gygus, probably one of the creepiest boss fights in gaming history, is just the cherry on top of the sundae. Mansion of Madness. Time Splitters Future Perfect. Future Perfect is yet another game that isn't really horror, but does have plenty of horror-like moments. Many Time Splitters games do, actually. The Mansion of Madness is a pretty eerie place. It is, for one thing, full of zombies, and zombies are never not creepy. There are also plenty of bizarre, unsettling sights to take in, chief among which has to be a corpse almost drowning in a tub full of blood. Yikes. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.